Okay, so hello and welcome. We're in our fourth session, and now the tables have turned from me to you guys. So you're going to start presenting your research projects. And I've got projects by a number of you. Would anybody like to start? Robin, you want to start? Great. Um, so as I sort of mentioned to you guys, the ideal format is you present and then save a little bit of time for a group discussion about the presentation. So it's really helpful if you have any target questions you might want to ask response around. And I would also love to invite everybody to leave a comment for each presentation, in addition to any verbal feedback you'd like to give. Okay, so with that, I'll pass it off to you, Robin, and I'm going to share my screen and open up your slideshow. Here we go.
Thank you.
And so just give me the heads up of when to
Move.
go to the next slide. Sorry, my
Okay.
mouse has disappeared.
Well, even though you've generously given me 18 minutes, I don't think I'm going to use it all. So,
One quick, revision on that is that we do, another person just joined. So let's shoot for about 15 minutes. And I'll be I don't hate having this job, but I'll be the timekeeper.
all
And I
right,
can give people 2-minute warnings if they'd like.
great. Okay, if you could go to, so I put my stuff together to talk about in terms of context, actions, and uh, although they're minimal results. So if you could just go ahead to the next slide. These are the things that I was thinking about for the last couple of weeks is not only transitioning my practice and refining my practice, but experimenting with new materials, techniques, integrating those things into my practice. And actually, it's kind of turned out to take my practice in a little bit of a different direction than I initially imagined. And that's actually been pretty energizing. Next slide. I started off with, the things that we talked about in the first 3 weeks of the values and goals, and I realized that although zero waste and sourcing are important to me, biodegrading is probably a higher value because if I can get that right, I don't have to worry so much about zero waste. So it, in a way, kind of helps tackle a couple of goals that I had. I did a quick inventory of what I'm currently working with and realized that I have a lot of skills development. I've got a lot to learn in terms of how to make these different materials work and how to forage for them, acquire the whole cradle to cradle um,
Cradle to
life.
grave, I think.
Well, I'm
Is
hoping to
what
not
the
have a grave. I'm hoping to just keep anyway. Next slide.
mm,
So again, exploring. I really kind of had my thinking in two directions, and I've since creating these slides, I've kind of figured out what my priority is. I was looking initially at natural ink making, out of materials from nature, and the other was because I did a lot of paper making, and so I was starting to think about how to use other parts of the plant for sculptural purposes, and that would have been looking at plant roots and having them actually grow into different kinds of structures. So initially, I kind of had two directions, but I think I've kind of narrowed it down to a priority and then one that's just going to be in hold. So next slide. This is my initial working with the natural ink making, um, different sources. I was making some black walnut ink, some copper, oxide ink, and since then it's just really kind of blossomed.
Robin,
Next,
I'm just curious if you ended up doing the light test and testing for, I'm curious about the rock,
I
copper
it,
oxide in particular.
it hasn't changed yet.
Huh.
So it'll I'm sure it will over time. I'm sure all of these will over time. But currently it's only been a couple of weeks and it's not been in full, it's not been summer sun kind of thing. So yeah, it's so far so good. And honestly, I don't anticipate that any of these inks are going to be particularly light fast. I know some recipes to make inks because of the development of ink for legal documents over hundreds of years ago, that there are some known ways to make inks that will, have pretty much a centuries of durability, but
Hmm.
that's kind of off to the side. That's a part of the knowledge base. Um, Next, and at the beginning of all of this, I was looking at different ways of growing grasses and other kinds of plants hydroponically because, like I said, I wanted that to I'm sorry, I wanted to access the root systems, so I didn't want to grow any of the plants in soil because that was going to just make um, being able to access them that much more difficult. So I did some research on it. I have an idea of the kinds of plants and the kind of system that I would use. But right now, and maybe it's because it's still not really terribly warm here, that's just kind of taken a back seat to the natural inks. None of those are my experiments. Those are just notes that I have for myself to when I come back to it. And next, so playing around with the inks, making different kinds of patterns and doing different, interaction of the natural sourced inks because I'm also a printmaker. So I really wanted to see if there was a way to print using my press to print the inks and not just have them. We've all had the experience of putting something, having that puddle of wet, whether it's ink or whatever, and it just squishes out the sides when you apply any pressure to it. So this I feel like was a big win for me because I was able to figure out how to print using a printing press my inks and allowing them to still be interactive with one another. So that was kind of a good outcome that I can kind of chalk up and I'll be utilizing that going forward. And I'm not sure if there's anything after that. Oh, okay. So these are just some of the things that I have going, some of my results and some next steps is continuing to clear out. How many of us have, want more stuff in our house? Not me. So I'm looking at clearing out a lot of stuff that I, haven't been or won't be, especially with this new direction, won't be using, donating to different centers, schools, whatnot, and really just learning these. Again, my focus is going to be for a while on the inks, so, working with different kinds of materials, different processes for extracting the inks, and really just getting comfortable using the inks. Again, coming out of the paper making, I'm going back into a 2D world. So it's it's exciting and daunting at the same time because I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I haven't actually touched a brush for like as in painting for about 4 years. So it's kind of relearning and reawakening some of those old activities, muscle behaviors. Anyways, so I'm having a blast, and I think that's it. I hope that's it. Yep, that's it. Okay.
Awesome. stop sharing so we can. That's so exciting, Robin. I have some thoughts and questions myself, but I wanted to see if anybody else wanted to start.
I have a question. First, I just wrote in the chat, Robin, that I'm so impressed with all the experimentation you've done and really appreciated hearing you talk about that. But I would like to understand more about how you plan to use the roots of the plants that you're growing. I'm really interested in that, and I just was wondering if you could talk about that a little more.
Because I haven't done much with that, um, I don't have much to report on that because I thought I could do the two projects in tandem, but I've really been drawn into the ink making world. I'm kind of figuring that as I get back in, I'll pull the other stuff, the roots back out. But that was going to be a lot of trial and error. And if could figure out different ways, especially hydroponically, I thought I had more access, would have more access to maybe shaping the growth of the different plant roots. So it was going to be a lot of trial and error and hopefully coming up with something. In order for it to be something structural, it has to be, there's certain criteria that a plant has to take on for this is the paper maker thinking in me is there's certain things that I have to be able to allow for and maybe even coerce out of the plants. It's super experimental and I have no idea if it's going to work, but I don't know right now. My ignorance is bliss and what I don't know is is going to keep me moving forward. I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for that.
That's a great question too. I had a similar question around how you were going to integrate the roots into your paper sculptures, which I've had the pleasure of seeing in person. Robin and I were in a show together at the Morgan Paper Conservatory, which is in Cleveland, where Robin lives, which is one of the most in, like it's one of the biggest paper making facilities in the US, if I believe.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, your paper sculptures are incredible. And I'm just imagining like the way that they take on all of these sort of wild and radically organic shapes and how the roots will play into that. Will they in some way be guiding the shapes or the overall shape that the form is taking? And I was also sort of imagining like because I've seen a lot of people make paper and then apply organic material to the surface after they've made the pulp, screened it out, then they apply the organic like I've seen a lot of petals and plant material and then they
Mhm.
let that dry so they sort of sit on the surface in varying degrees of success like how they sit but I could also imagine you sort of integrating it into the pulp and then uh making the shapes but yeah I'm like really excited to see how that develops. And one other thing I was wondering is if you see yourself integrating the inks that you're making with the paper sculptures and the roots or those are like two separate projects.
No, initially I was thinking that I could utilize the inks to color the plant roots by the way that the plant roots take in their nutrients. They could also take in
Hmm.
the dyes. This is something that I did, back in junior high, whatever. But one of the things that about the two projects that's important to me, and also the paper you just reminded me of, is one of the things I really like to see in my work is what I call voice of the materials. So I like for the materials to not be so tamed that I'm making all the decisions. I like to give the materials a way to kind of groove and show a little bit of their own energy. If you I don't even
I
know if
love
it
that.
right
I'm
there.
throwing it in the chat. I just love throwing random things that people say in the chat that stick with me. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
beautiful. That's a beautiful way of putting it too. when I talk about like the way I like to think of it is the medium becomes your teacher and you're like in collaboration with this material. So like what shapes does it want to take on? But
And
yeah, that's a really beautiful way of thinking about it.
I learned with the paper that the paper came up with such interesting and intriguing shapes that I would never have imagined. So, hopefully it's a good collaboration.
Yeah. We're just about at time, but Robin, if you have the if it's easy and accessible to you, it would be great if you could throw a link to some pictures of your paper sculpture work in the chat, just so other folks can see
I'll do that.
if they haven't already.
All right, I'll do that.
Um,
Thank you, everyone.
awesome. Snaps and clap.
Thank you, everyone.
And yeah, you've got some comments in the chat too, Robin, to check out. Would anybody like to go next?
I can.
Okay, great.
I'll have to try
Oh,
sharing
let
my
me make sure
screen
you,
because I didn't give
okay.
you my thing.
You should be able to now. Let me know if you have trouble.
Is that good?
Yes. Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Um, I the start of this course that we're doing, it coincided with the start of my Masters in Visual Arts course. So I'm just sharing some of what I've been doing. My research proposal explores my relationship with the earth ancestrally through my Maori heritage in New Zealand and materially. So I'm looking at these material relationships, and my target was to paint layered water-based paintings without micro or nanoplastics that are in acrylic paint. There are lots of other parameters I could have considered, like the carbon footprint, but I can only look at one thing really in this 18-month program. I have been doing some painting with earth pigments and lime-based paint before, but I'd still been using acrylic gesso or pre-primed canvas, which is using acrylic gesso. So I really wanted to go back to grounds as a foundational step and find a plastic-free ground that was stable. So I took the easy route and used a kit which is put out by Natural Earth Paint, a gesso kit, and it comes with these, the powdered, like the marble dust, titanium oxide mixture, and then they provide methyl cellulose, which you make into like an old-fashioned wallpaper paste. And so I prepared a board with this, and I found it to be a little brittle. And they do have another product which they call acrylic medium with a K. So it's not actually plastic acrylic. Um, they they don't disclose the recipe, but it's cellulose based. And I found that by adding just a little bit of that, it gave it the gesso much more strength. So I was really, whoopsie, I was really happy about that. Um, this was the next ground that I tried, and I do apologize to vegans because I'm using rabbit skin glue. For a lot of people here, they'd probably be happy if it was using rabbits, because rabbits are a huge problem. Not just for farmers, but for native forest. But it doesn't actually use rabbits. It's kind of keratin byproducts from the meat industry. So I'd collected this beautiful clay, which is near a white clay mine, and made paint with the rabbit skin glue, which I rehydrated, and I put many layers on board. And in the end, I polished it, and I came to really like it as a surface, just on its own. And after this step, I rubbed a little graphite in it to highlight those imperfections. And I thought, yeah, I could have a big painting like that, because I'm a bit of a minimalist. Here I was mixing, I was building up layers of painting, and this is a layer that's still wet, where I've mixed earth with that commercial cellulose medium that I mentioned. I was trying to get crusty paint, and I used my palms to really push the paint onto the board.
Helen, could I just ask real quick, is this on top of the gesso that you made?
Yeah,
And what's
absolutely.
and what ground are you using? Is it canvas or wood?
A board. Board.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I figured if I wanted to do something a bit thick like this, it would probably crack on canvas if there was any movement.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is the latest thing I've been working on. I got 5 meters of which I suppose is about 5.5 yards of unprimed canvas, and I put the first layer of quite thin paint made out of clay and rabbit skin glue on with a broom, just because it's so big. And then I took it outside and did this sort of frottage painting. So I was rubbing paint on top of rocks, which created imprints and trees. And we had a storm, so I was taking bits of bark that fell down and rubbing that on, a bit like pastel.
Wow.
So this is the finished piece, which I presented at university, and I was a bit limited with the space here, because it was in a foyer and I couldn't have people falling over it. Ideally, I would have had it more in relationship to the floor than going way up the wall. So I've put it with these other boards that I'd been making. These deeper marks on it, they're done with paint made with iron oxide that I bought. And what I'd done was to sort of scrunch the canvas, and I made it into a makeshift meditation mat. And it was really comfortable to lie on, and I just imagined connecting with the earth and sort of talking talking to the earth and the area where I am. And after I'd done that, I painted the surface that I'd laid on with the iron oxide paint, and that created these abstract marks. And here's a close-up of one. And I've also used shellac on there, a couple of layers, and that gave it more of a sort of crunchy, leathery surface. So, it feels a bit more animalistic. But the step I'm doing now is I'm taking the shapes of these marks and I'm trying to recreate them in soft stone. So my idea is that if I had this canvas more on the floor, that these kind of small sculptures could extend out from the canvas as though there's a relationship with the environment. So I'm wanting to show this commonality of materials between myself and the ground. So yeah, so that's where I'm at now. Does anyone have any questions?
They're incredibly beautiful works. Thank you, Helen. I'm also wondering if they really remind me of some of the works of Judy Watson, the Australian Indigenous artist. Have you seen her work?
No, thank you for her name.
She works on that sort of scale and very much about the landscape and, her traditional lands and things like that. So yeah, well worth a look. She had a big
Great, thank you,
retrospective
Jane.
at the Queensland Art Gallery.
Oh,
Wow, thank you so much, Helen. It's so beautiful to see your process. And I love the scale that the piece you showed installed starts to take on. And I also love your means of application are so sort of integrated with a natural approach of using the body and the land to find a language of mark making. It's so beautiful all around. And I'm struck by the color. I do sense that the iron oxide really turned the volume up when they're red, but even earlier on with the volcanic earth, that red there was just, oh, it's just so beautiful. It's incredible. I was also wondering, um, did you use the traditional gesso in the final large cotton piece as well, or no, because you thought it might crack, like you were saying?
no, I didn't use it. What I did was I more kind of sized it with the rabbit skin glue.
That alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I
That
kind
makes
of
sense.
missed out that step. And in some previous pieces before I started the courses, I tried using soy, and that was pretty thin. So I kind of followed that process of having that first layer being very dilute and then using that as a sort of underpainting.
Hmm. I yeah, I've worked quite a bit with rabbit skin glue. Um, but it was actually rabbit skin, so it's curious. It doesn't surprise me at
Oh,
all that you have a
wow.
derivative. And I get mine through Kramer, which I think I mentioned the Kramer pigments in one of my slideshows. They're based in New York City. But there are companies all over that have different, but essentially hide glue operates as a hide glue. You can use different hides. Um,
Yeah.
and it's cool when I've, I used to work as a gilder, which is like applying gold leaf to surfaces. And you can, if you start to play around with the rabbit skin glue to powdered gesso ratio, it can start to operate more sculpturally. You can start to sculpt things. But and I wonder if you found this too with the methyl cellulose. When I'm sure you've noticed that rabbit skin glue, similar to watercolors, will wake back up when you wet it again. So it comes alive again. And you also have to be so careful not to overheat it because the so traditionally what you would do is the way that I was trained at least, you would soak the crystals in cold water overnight and put it in the refrigerator, and then it will expand up. You put it usually about 1 part crystals to 10 parts water, and then you heat it up. But you usually want to use a double boiler because and this is cool, just learning the visuals of this helped me remember it. If you look under a microscope at the rabbit skin glue, it's a series of coils that interlock with each other, and that's where it creates the binding effect. But if you heat it past a certain point, the coils will break, and that's where you start to see cracking happen. And the temperature, the way that I was trained to do this is you should be able to stick your finger in the water for about in the glue for about 5 to 10 seconds and not have it be too hot to keep your finger in. I'm sure there's a specific temperature you can find too, though. But yeah, that is just something to be mindful of because it can be a real bummer after all that labor to have the cracking happen. One other thing I wanted to mention is that in gilding we would use rabbit skin glue with clays, and my mentor who I was working under had a molar. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. It's like it rotates around, and that's how we would get the clay extremely fine, like so fine. But I think there's something very cool about still being able to see these particles and like the sort of roughness, the organic sort of texture of the nature of the material in your work. But just to say that if you did desire it being smoother, then that's just one way you could go about it.
Oh,
But
wow.
beautiful work.
I didn't know that those sorts of things were available outside of paint companies, really, really.
Yeah. You can also make your own if you, for example, if you found somebody who's hunting rabbits near you. I mean, it's a lot of labor involved, but you
Mm,
could make your own hide glues. Just to say that that's available to you. If you did find some farmers who really didn't like their rabbits and were,
yeah.
yeah.
So when I was working at that size, I heated up the rabbit skin glue in a crock pot. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with that word?
Yeah, yeah. I think that the one thing you might just want to be careful is that you're consistently moving it around so the heat doesn't build up with all of the material at the bottom and burn it there.
Mm-hmm,
Because you
mm-hmm.
might just stick your finger in the top and think, oh, it's cool, but actually like the bottom is burning, right? Which
Good
is
point.
kind of one thing that's a benefit of having a double boiler because the heat is diffused a bit more. It's not directly hitting that one contact area at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we
Oh,
do have to move on, but that's
yeah.
so wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you. Stop
Um,
sharing.
and do check the chat, Helen, because there's some more great comments
Ah,
for you. And I threw a book
oh,
reference that somebody just lent me about wild clay. So wild crafting clay. And
oh.
what was the clay term? The type of clay that you wrote, it was some is a term that I keep seeing, colon, I think. I forget how you say it, but it's
Helen?
yeah, I'm trying to learn more about clay properties right now. It sounds like you have some great clay near you. Um, I want to do a project where I'm trying to work in community with like wildcrafting clay and then doing pit firings. but I'm like just starting a long-term research project of learning how to do that because there's so much behind it. Um, awesome. Who would like to go next? Jane, did you say you want to go?
Yeah, I could go next.
Awesome.
I just try and get my document to share. Might have said this too early. Oh, here it is. Desktop. Oh, maybe someone else while I just work out what I'm doing.
Okay. I've got Suzanne, do you want to go? I've got your presentation. Okay. You're on mute, just so you know.
Sure, I can go. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. Here we go.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm Suzanne, and I actually am so grateful for this class. I'm going to kind of take advantage of this presentation time, and I hope you can let me know when I'm like 10 minutes into it, because what I really
sure.
want to do is get everyone's feedback on a project I've been thinking about for a long time. And I'm going to ask you some questions about the project. And I'm thinking just new eyes, especially from artists and obviously people who've been thinking about this topic. I'm hoping you could really just give me some ideas, or if not, maybe as you think of something, you could either put it in the chat or either sometime later, send me your thoughts. So I'll tell you about the project a little further along in the presentation. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself and my artist practice. I already actually have a pretty ecologically focused artist practice. I think I already told you that I finished a master's degree at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, last spring. And I took that 2 years to really do a lot of the same kind of investigating and experimentation that you've all mentioned, with all sorts of different materials. And so I landed on what you see here, which is, I'll explain what it is. I collect botanical material, and I also use found fabric to create woven, like kind of three-dimensional wall sculptures and sometimes standalone sculptures. And that's one example that you see here on the first page. So if you can turn to the next page, please, Anna. So this is where I live. It's pretty urban, and my building is the gray one kind of in the middle. It's in the Dumbo area of Brooklyn. And I show you that just because a big thing that I wanted to do in my practice was to basically kind of showcase and think through themes about our connection to the natural world, but it's kind of hard to do that in the city. So what I do is, if you could turn to the next slide, please. I'm lucky in that a few blocks from my apartment, there's Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is this beautiful park along the East River. And I go and I walk there almost every day. And so for me, having a part of my artist practice be that I really engage with the natural world, that was something that was really important to me. And sometimes I even collect materials there only if I see they're like in a pile, and I know they're going to be, they're kind of like otherwise going to be taken to the landfill. And then if you could turn to the next slide, please. So this is a shot of my studio. I have a studio right around the block from where I live. And you can see some more pieces and the different ways that I kind of weave the textiles in with the branches. So again, my practice is engaging with the natural world in a way with the branches. And then for the textiles, I engage with people in the community. And in fact, I want to let you know, all of you, if you ever have sheets that you're going to otherwise throw away, please email me. I'll pay for the postage, or if you're somewhere local, I'll walk to pick them up. And so I engage with people in the community in taking their sheets. And if they seem open to it, I have conversations with them about bed sheets being where we sleep when we rest as we dream, and a place where we access our subconscious selves. And so in weaving that within natural materials, I think of engaging with the world, the natural world, on a deeper level. And so you can turn to the next slide, please. So here just is a kind of closer up view of kind of two different iterations of ways I kind of weave. Sometimes it's I take the sheets and cut them into strips and dye them in, I drink a lot of tea, and I save my tea bags, and I dye the sheets in vats of tea just to give it, more coloration. And there's some kind of symbolism there, or deeper meaning there too, that I don't need to get into. But anyway, so sometimes on the left, the strips will just sort of follow along with the branches, or on the right kind of be woven into. And the idea is, I think in our culture, in so many ways, so many of us are disconnected from the natural world. I think we look at nature in a way, in some ways, like how we can control it is how a lot of people look at nature. And so the idea with these pieces is more to flow with nature and to kind of be woven into it in a much kind of more gentle way. So that's my work. If you could turn to the next slide, please. And I'm really inspired by this artist. I'm sure some of you are familiar with her work, Eugenia Emmets. And she's come up with this idea to do this, in a lot of ways, kind of non-material project with her artist practice. And she calls it the Eternal Forest. And what I took this from the website, and if you want more information about it, the website's listed at the bottom. But the vision is to create 1,000 eternal forest sanctuaries across the world. So basically, she's taking and the artist is there on the left-hand side at the top. I don't know if you can see her kind of in the group there, but anyway, she lives in Portugal. And so basically, it's what she's done is very creatively taken the idea of like a conservation organization and made it this art form. And it models the idea of supporting forests with time and money as a form of art. And I was so inspired by that, and really excited about it. And I thought, I want to do something not exactly like that, but something similar. And I'm sorry if you could switch.
Oh, you're fine. Suzanne, can you just I'm just curious, how does the Eternal Forest manifest? Like here we see sort of I see her being recorded. What happens?
Okay, so she has created it, and like I said, she's working with people in communities to help protect land to actually
Mhm.
help protect forests, like a regular conservation company, but
Mhm.
she's made it an art form, like she's made it a part of her practice, and she talks about it
Mhm.
as an artist, and she actually makes artwork and has shows about that is showcasing the artwork. She's created videos of people in the community talking about why trees and their forests are important to them. Um, it's,
Gotcha.
it's an ongoing, yeah, it's probably been happening for like 10 years now. And so it's
Hmm.
very fully formed. Yeah, and
Cool.
yeah, and so yeah, she's actually made it into a nonprofit organization. So
I'd love to look up some of the strategies she's using to do that. That's
yeah,
cool.
I would highly recommend reading, looking at her website. It's so inspiring. So I kind of look to that, but I don't want to do something exactly like that. I'll kind of describe what I'm thinking about, and then I have questions for everyone just to kind of help me think through it. So my vision is I want to create a project that supports and promotes the work of either artists, organizations, or communities who are creatively responding to the human impact on the planet in ways that foster change. So I am lucky in that I have access to a fund. And so I'd like to use that to offer 8 to 10, I guess, grants, I'd call them, or maybe come up with another word for it, of somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000 every year. And so I'll stop right here and say, basically, I'm kind of like, whereas Eugenia looked at conservation groups and kind of created her own artistic way of approaching it, this is almost like a foundation, I guess you could say, but on a much smaller scale. And anyway, so I'll keep going. So my goal is to promote and connect creatives who are doing this good work, especially in this current political environment when, the focus is so far from what I think really needs to be happening right now. So that's my idea. And then if we could turn to the last page. So these are the things I'm still kind of thinking about in my mind. I'm trying to think of a title for the project, how I could connect it to my own work, or maybe that doesn't need to happen. I'm thinking through that. I have a question about how I'll promote the work of these people. I definitely would do it on my own social media accounts, and at some point definitely set up a website, but I'm looking for other ideas about promoting. And then what I'd love to do is with these 8 or 10 groups or people at the end of the year, send out or have like maybe just have a Zoom event where people all present like just short presentations to kind of learn and I gotta share ideas with each other, or maybe just send out some kind of like a newsletter to everybody so that they all see kind of things that other people are doing. And so that's my idea, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
Suzanne, I have a question just to clarify. Maybe I'll stop sharing so you can, or I'll leave these up for a minute for folks to look at. Is the would this be an ongoing project, or are you imagining like 1 year of funding these artists and then that's like the project?
This, I would see it as ongoing, so it would
Okay.
be, yeah, it would keep going on, and every year I would hope to support like 8 to 10 artists, or the only thing I guess I do want to clarify is if it is an artist, the artist would have to have a fiscal sponsor. So that means they'd have to be working with a nonprofit group who could accept the funds. But there are a lot of just very small nonprofit groups or community groups that are also doing like this kind of work, that have like a single project in a certain year that's like really creative. So it could also support, the project could also support that as well. So it'd be kind of connecting artists and nonprofits in that way too.
Well, and also one other quick, are there any specific questions you want us to consider in relation to your work specifically? No, no pressure, just curious.
I know, I just would leave that open. I'm interested in any, like, people who are just hearing this idea for the first time, just thoughts and ideas from you all. So, yeah.
Cool. I've got some thoughts, but I want to give some other folks space to comment first.
I think it's a really exciting project. Because I work in that space, I'm just thinking for you, you may choose to collaborate with one, or if you've got multiple artists that you're supporting in that year, maybe there's a way as part of the brief to see where there may be some collaboration, but with not necessarily a pressure, because it might not be, you might not be aligned with each other's practice. But there may be something, because there might be, a lot of us do multidisciplinary things. So, it might be something that you might like to engage with that practice. Or there's some, I recently saw something where someone in Australia was sponsoring or providing some funds. And for him, it was just that connection and engagement with that artist was for him the really important part of his support.
Yeah, those are great. That's a good thought, Jane. I love that idea. I mean, if any of our creatives are open to collaborating, I would be really, of course, interested in that. Yeah, and the connection engagement is definitely what I'm interested in. I feel like, and also just I feel like, yeah, to take this. I mean, in making work, it's always kind of, you think of like the ego part of it and yourself as creating, but there are so many other people doing such good work then to take the focus, yeah, off of myself too. So, yeah, thank you.
I also think there is some room there, though, for you to work off of the methods you're using in your own practice as a template or a structure for how you might organize building out this web or ecosystem of artists that might be like, I'm thinking of weaving as like, what is weaving, right? You're literally like, where you're integrating, binding, connecting, adjoining fibers to create this structure of this whole, right? So I'm thinking of I'm just like, I don't know, my mind immediately, because this is something I'm actually trying to think through myself right now. But is like, how do you build the support structure for, there's many ways you could go about it. You could certainly just like offer grants and have, I love the idea of artist talks, like sort of what we're doing here right now. Like everybody presents their work at the culmination of each year in some public panel. And that's also a way you can start, bringing in people to spread awareness of the project itself. But then like, for me, the question that's really interesting is like, how do you build out a support network within those artists where they are informing and inspiring each other and like building towards something that is like a larger whole that they're all connected to. And like maybe that looks like sharing resources, having, online communication platforms that are possible, or like giving and recording artist talks that are then like archived on some main hub or something. But yeah, I think that's a really exciting project. And one other thing I wanted to say is I've had this artist speak in my class a few times several years back, Maria Elena, who is she uses natural dyes for fibers. And she teaches at FIT. I can't believe I'm blanking on her last name right now, but I'm going to try to find her artist talk and send it to you because she also is living and working in this in like the ecosystem of New York City. And she will go to so a lot of this the material she's sourcing to use in her natural dyeing processes are pulling upon sort of industrial ecosystems. So she'll go to a ton of different shops near her and collect like all the avocado pits that they have that they're not using. And she just like finds ways to source materials for organic dyes in an urban setting.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'm excited for you, and I think that those are generative questions you have to. There's just so many possibilities. So, like, I think the question becomes like, how much time do you have to put into this, and how much, because that's like there are a ton of things you could do to really sort of create like an ecosystem of a project, but that's also a ton of labor and time to organize that. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, it seems like it could be a space where also there could be space for fundraising too, where you have events where those people's artworks are shown, and it's a way to raise more funds for the foundation, for instance.
Mm.
hmm
That would be really, I love that. That sounds really fun.
yeah,
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
awesome. Thanks, Suzanne. And you just had your thesis show, is that right?
Oh, no, I graduated last May.
Ah, okay,
So,
okay.
no, the photo I showed is my studio.
Yeah, it's incredible studio. And the reflections too almost like become their own sculptures, like drawing sculptures on the ground, and that relationship is so cool.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite things. We actually were so lucky to find this studio. It already had the floor, which to me, it has a shine, and I wasn't
Mm.
sure about the shine at first, but I don't know, you can't really see the undercolor is brown like the earth. So it really felt like the earth.
Yeah.
And then the shine really grew on me when I started seeing all the reflections. We had open studios last weekend, and it was so funny because everyone who came in, like there'd be our, I share the studio with a friend and her work's on the other side, and we're like, so interested to hear people's reaction to our work, and they'd all walk in and they'd be like, this floor is so great. We'd be sitting there like, okay, awesome. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah,
It was
that's
funny.
cool though.
Yeah.
I have, sorry, I'm looking through, I'm trying to find my other presentations that people have sent me. I've got, would anybody like to go next? Any volunteers? Christina, you want to go?
I'd love to go. How are you all? I'm really in awe of everybody, and thank you for your attention and also shared wisdoms. It's amazing. Today I'm in the unceded lands of Kewa and Katista. Next time we see each other, I probably will be in the unceded lands of the Danan in Ireland. Uh, let's start the presentation.
All right.
So I came to this with my first question came about because recently I was working with gold leaf and I was aware of the processes involved with gold and gold making gold leaf. And so that really started the question. This has now opened up. Tell me if you can hear me first off. It it has
Yep.
opened up into my all of my image gathering practice. I work, I guess I've worked since the age of 19, so probably over 50 years with uh, different image gathering processes, technically quite specific, working with large format cameras, uh, with all kinds of lighting, working commercially, and then moving to London first, and working with collaborating with artists and kind of creating their images in the two of us together. then I moved to Ireland, and in the natural world, started really becoming aware of integrating alternative photographic processes with my large format negatives and using the sun. Now, a lot of the chemicals are extremely poisonous, carcinogenic. I was aware of that very early on, so I had already opened up my practice to how to carefully manage things and also either recycle or store and give to the proper places or use as much little as possible. I am now realizing you can go much further and than this, and there's a young group of artists in England, from what mainly in England, who have started up. Next page, please. With this, okay, this we'll go back and forth. So this is some of my long-term different kinds of things that inform my work. I have lived in now the west of Ireland for over 30 years, and so got very deep into the land, and lichens and moss are my world. But I also worked with deep herbalism and like coming back to the States, California and New Mexico, getting to grips with the natural world here, which is completely different than the Irish world. In the alternative photographic processes, I've used a lot of the historical processes, and like with cyanotype now, I've been working and experimenting with natural plants and dyeing using natural plants and methods. More recently, back to basics, is from this sustainable darkroom movement. So we go to the next slide, please. So most recently, right now, I found the sustainable darkroom, and that grew out of the London Alternative Photographic Co-op in 2020. And there are a lot of people writing dissertations, PhD, master's dissertations, so much incredible multidisciplinary work using the photographic image making, but also now natural processes. And so they have been researching intensively across the world, bringing people from across the world, artists, scientists, explorers, into this conversation. Next. And now this looks more like what everyone's been doing. So with the photographic process, it turns out it's quite simple. It's a phenolinic plant material, ascorbic acid, vitamin C, and sodium carbonate can be combined to create a non-toxic developer for both the darkroom and for both film and for paper printing. Now, there's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. Obviously, archivalness is a huge question, but I decided to start at the beginning. And so I have gathered in this picture, rosemary, and began the process of extraction. And it's a very simple process using water, and I was pushed for time, so I added alcohol. Next one. And at the same time, I had seen about salt fixing. So I gathered seawater, and from 2 gallons of seawater, I produced 218 grams of salt flakes. The downside on that is using, I have a gas-fired stove. So there's lots of questions. Is this actually sustainable? So there's always these kind of balancing points with every process, but I did do that as well. Next line, please. I went into the community college darkroom with my materials, and I was very, very fortunate. They have small rooms that are set up as alternative photographic dark rooms, so I had a sink and a processing unit. And it's very simple, just like, I guess, like how one makes plant dyes for ink. But like I had to use some sort of like you could use paper or muslin to do the screening. And from the original water with alcohol, I produced a liquid, which then I added ascorbic acid and sodium carbonate to make a 500 ml extraction. The out this was just for one roll of 120 film, so it would have been 2 rolls of 35 millimeter film. Now the interesting process comes next. Next picture, please. It's very process orientated. Instead of just rolling on your film onto a reel, you want to cut off a small piece, a clip, because what one does is make a drop test every time you create an extraction. The drop test will tell you how your film and the type of film is responding to the particular extraction. And from this drop test, you can make come up with a time. It's like you divide the time, the timed time that the drop changes color and holds a dark color by 4, and you get your developing time. And there are a lot of things that I found like that isn't online or isn't in any book yet, i.e. you have to put all the information together. It's not like written down in simple steps with every bit in there. So you get to a step and then you have to go back and almost start again. So it was very worthwhile starting on this experimental research project because I'm actually doing the process step by step. Okay, next line. So my first test, it was actually 20 minutes, which is a very long time in the developer, was proposed with my drop test for my rosemary extraction. I did a water stop of 1 minute. You can use acetic acid, but that is not as sustainable. Water slows down the process, and with such a slow developing, I felt it was absolutely, not a problem using water just to slow down and slow the process down. Then this time I did use store-bought EcoFix, which has very low toxicity, and you can recycle well. So I will in the future now be putting in the salt fix in this experimenting now with the salt fix in there as well. And then but that can take 24 hours actually, the salt fix. So like you're supposed to agitate every once in a while, you bring it up to 35 degrees, you pour it over the film or the paper, and then you have to leave it with intermittent agitation for at least 24 hours. So time changes with this whole process. It's much slower than the usual darkroom process. And then I also found out, which I didn't know before, that if you fill the tank with water for the wash and agitate constantly for 5 minutes, then you refill it 4 times, you get an archival piece of film without having constant water, gallons of water running over it to give you the archival. So that was interesting. So I'm deep in the woods or in the weeds or in the stems here. So I found out that, I will be wanting to probably steep my plant material longer and would love to try different plant materials. And this is kind of like the ecosystem thing of matching where the image has come from with plants that are there already as the developer. And then now I won't spoil anything, but if you go to the next page, you'll see what happened. I ended up with a black piece of film because I used film that had been sitting in my camera for over a year and a half. And so it had exposed itself completely before I made any exposures. So process was all in this experiment.
Wow. I'm going to stop sharing. Well, I'm going to run through real quick, actually, one more time to see. Beautiful documentation. Wow. Thank you, Christina. Does, does anybody have do you have any questions for us, direct questions, or does anybody have any responses before I chime in?
I would say that this is just a small piece of my sustainable practice. Uh, Recently, I have been working with more kind of like immersion installations and public art where I create an installation using, for example, salt crystals and borax crystals and embedded images. And the idea is that people can interact, i.e., walk through it, and it changes, just like how your
Mm,
steps change things. I really
mm,
love interaction with people and a material to create like a different mind space. Not just my images doing that, but also the experience creating that in itself. And then also the thing that the installation changes all the time because of of people either walking through or interacting. And I also love, I mean, I know that everyone like uses cyanotype workshops and things, but there's a lot of like I haven't even started into the paper, like what surfaces you could be printing
mm,
on. And so there's
mhm,
arthrotypes and there's lumen and there's like plant, you can actually print on plants. And like
mhm,
they're
mhm,
neat. It's a Dia. I can't say his name correctly. He takes his plant prints and encases it in resins to give it long
mm,
life. But also, like I've also already worked with the whole thing of how images change over time, and personally, I like that. And like a lot of my images that I will have like on like my personal website are ones that have changed as opposed to the
mm,
perfect ones or how they, came out 30 years ago. At the same time, I do have a lot of images that are archival, but I also like that interface. And with image gathering, you probably hear I use the language of photography very carefully because I find as well, first off, I came to photography as a young woman and feminist, and like the whole thing of how the colonial patriarchy has taken language and turned it upside down, which is even more so now. It's really important with photography, and there are always these very impinging words used about image gathering and very
mm,
violent words. And so that's
mhm,
also a really important part of my practice is kind of opening up that conversation.
mm. Wow. Gosh, Christina, I feel like you could just teach a whole class about this. I've had a number of photographers in my class before, and nobody's ever gone so in depth with the process in the way you are, and like really doing it step by step. I'm not a photographer. I don't have that background, and I regret that I don't have more um, insight to offer when I have photographers come through my class. I'd love to, yeah, I don't know, like work with you somehow in the future to help assist when I do get photographers who come through. It's really exciting. And I do appreciate too that it sounds like it is, takes a lot more time. It's much more inconvenient than the traditional processes. But there's hopefully some magic to be found in that. And then I think also like integrating this material exploration that you're doing now with a historical lens, like a historical consciousness of how photography has been used in the field to as like, an agent of imperialism or coloniality, and like how, and thinking through like, yeah, just how, I don't know, it's important. It's important to like layer those things. I think that makes for a really powerful. It would be really cool if in your final presentation you touch upon that a little bit. Um, but I don't want to take up too much space here. Does anybody else want to throw in some thoughts or reflections?
Can I just quickly, I think it's really exciting what you're doing with your current process, your current journey, because it's you're obviously incredibly excited about it, and how that will work with your broader investigation and work with the installation and people and things like that. It sounds really exciting. And I'm wondering if you've connected with Megan Ringrose over in the UK, who's doing similar types of works.
Not
I'll put
yet.
I'll put her name in the chat.
Thank you. I did notice that it's very Europe centric at the moment, the research that I've seen.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, aren't the origins of photography pretty Eurocentric as well? I've been working with on this humanities archive, like digital archive, for decades. Or my with I'm it's just I just enter data, but earlier I was like had the job of scanning tons and tons of travel books that were basically just capturing photographs of all of the colonies, and like you see all of these African like people from different tribes, but just the sort of extractive lens of like capturing their image in this way, and the way that that was used to just create this whole support the whole narrative of like subordination in the colonial project is yeah, it's really um I'm at a loss for words right now, but it's an important part of the history of photography. And I was in a class, sorry, this is a little bit of a side tangent, but I was in a class yesterday with this brilliant humanities professor, Malcolm Sen, and he was talking about he's done a lot of research in Irish literature, and he was talking about how the history of the commons, like this idea of the commons, and I'm just bringing this up because your connection to Ireland. There were these there Ireland used to be heavily forested. I'm not sure. This was wild for me to learn. Like I had heard a bit about this, but it also I've been to Scotland. There's a grief that I feel in that landscape, and learning more about the history makes so much sense that there used to be densely forested areas that were Queen Elizabeth, I think it was, said, okay, we're gonna start deforesting all of these areas. Two reasons. One is for the wood that was used to in for one in for many things, but in one large part to build out ships to expand the colonial project, but also to it was as part of the enclosures movement, I believe. There were Irish radicals who were like hiding in the woods, and they were part of this ecosystem. So it was a way of controlling the area. But just learning about that history is sorry, it's a tangent on the colonial project, but it's just like a wild story to learn a bit more about.
Well, it's so interesting because the colonial project, like you think of it like in India or Africa, but like exactly that in Scotland and Ireland, it was done the same way against a whole,
Yes.
peoples, European peoples. So it's like
Yes.
people think of colonialism, and at the same time, as a individual, you probably see I've put it into my bio because it's very important. I've over the years, we're very lucky. Have a tiny little stone house scene, and our little farming can have maybe a few mammy pigs, and that's it. It's such poor land, but we are rich in native Irish oak. And so over the years I began to get the kind of I'd get
Mm.
I'd get like how you get a grant, I would get the permission to gather like 2 tons of acorns every 4 years to give
Mm,
to the quilcha for tree seed. So it was a way of
mm,
being part of the
mm.
reforestation.
Wow. Wow.
And it's fun
Beautiful.
gathering 2 tons of seeds.
Wow. Um, I don't want to diverge any
Take it, we'll go
further,
off.
but thank you. No, no,
Okay.
yeah, I'd love to open that up further, but for the sake of time, we should probably move
Yeah.
on to the next person. Any volunteers? Jane, you're on mute.
I just need to log out and log back in to be able to share my presentation.
Sure.
So I'll just quickly do that,
Okay,
but
sure.
maybe move on.
Mary, would you like to go or Kate?
Sure, I think I also might need to log out and log back in. I'm on this
Yeah, no
session that
problem.
keeps logging me out every half hour, so I'm gonna just do
Oh
that.
no.
And whoever gets
Okay.
back first.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Um, Christina, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, how like that trauma though started at that local level and then expanded out from there. Um, I'd love to send you some of the readings that we had about the commons. They're so powerful.
That would be lovely.
By the way, I'm not sure I've got anything to contribute apart from
Kate, did you want to
appreciating.
Hi, Kate.
Hi,
Kate, did you want
yeah.
to talk about the I think it was the Pete Cultures project?
Um, I s- I really just sent that as a way of making conversation because I haven't been able to follow the course the past
Yeah.
2 sessions yet. So I think I'm just earwigging at the moment.
Well,
Um,
how about do you want
yeah.
to go last and we can use the rest of the time to open up and you could share.
Okay.
And as I've said, this class is designed to meet you guys wherever you're at, right? So you don't feel the pressure to have to, follow it in the way that I'm like, you can share whatever you want. You could use it as a thinking space. Say, hey, I'm trying to work through these ideas, right? Okay, who wants to go? Go for it, Jane.
Is something coming up there?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Oops. So I am using this as a thinking space because I'm working on too many projects, and I'm not sure which to incorporate, to have as part of this. I'm very fortunate that I'm a steward of a beautiful rainforest in Australia. And so I've been working in the conservation, conserving it for 25 years. And as part of that, my partner and I set up a science and ideas hub so that we could talk to scientists and have them come to talk to the community about all sorts of things. And also it's not just, talks and walks and things. We do a lot of, I suppose I have it as part of my practice, a socially engaged practice to connect with community. So I'm just putting forward a couple of things that I'm working on at the moment. So this first one is Folia Morphological Journeys, and I'm working with Bulwarra Landcare they've come to our remnant rainforest to see what it's like when they do revegetation. So here's just a tiny sample of the different types of leaves, and they're learning about what the trees look like in a mature phase. So I'm starting a bit of a sculptural project where I'm looking at the leaves and I'm sort of blowing them up so that they can learn to identify different species. So I'm taking the leaves, I'm doing rubbings and all sorts of things to try and get the shapes and sizes, and having to do it on a roll of fabric too because of the shapes. I can't just flatten it out easily. And then eventually I'll use these hibiscus heterophyllus sticks on the side. They're quite tall. It's a plant that I'll talk about later. And my sculptures on the right, I use like the old wire fencing and things like that with felt that I've made. But I'll be using, so I'm going to enlarge the leaves either 3 or 4 by, and they'll go into those hibiscus heterophyllus sticks, and they'll be, and anyone coming on a walk in the forest will be able to take them out and sort of really look at them and touch them and play with them and get a sense of what they're like, so that they can learn about what the species, more about the species when they go back and work with their revegetation. It's possibly, I'm working towards something that's in this festival in France in June, but I'm not sure. But this is the replantings in the Bulwara Land Care group. It ties in with another thing I'm working with, the hibiscus heterophyllus, which are those tall sticks in that earlier image. This is it here. It's one of the pioneer species. It has this incredibly large white flower on it at certain times of the year, and that only lasts for a day. This is my partner and I in the top, well, that's my partner. You know, we've been doing a lot of regeneration on our property and getting rid of the weeds. And we're finding that the bottom pictures of where the hibiscus heterophyllus is a great pioneer species before the mature phase species come in. So I've cut them down, and here I'm debarking them. This is to get fibre. It has incredible fibre. Like if you're aware of bark cloth and things like that. So I'm debarking. This is the lengths. I mean, this is only a small hibiscus heterophyllus, and I'm removing the top sort of layer and then retting, which is RET. So it uses the biochemistry to get rid of the pectins and lignans and hemicellulose particles, so you're just left with the cellulose, which I'll be able to make fibre with. And this is something that I used, not the sticks that come out because that's a grass, but that's a lamandra, but the that's twisted hibiscus heterophyllus. But I'm hoping that with my new phase of retting and being able to bash it more like hit it like bark fibre, hopefully I can get it softer, and then I can start putting it into some textile works and dyeing it. So that leads to another thing where I've been doing these textile works, biodiversity strokes, and this is one I'm working on. This is front and back. It's only a work in progress, and it's about 2 meters tall at this stage. Where I'm using punch needle and proggy techniques like rag rug, and also lots of thrifting, lots of fibres from, you know, worn fibres, and particularly because this is a landscape and I'm sort of commenting on revegetation practices and human revegetation. I'm using the work shirts and things from that, you know, from the field. This is a piece, because I also do sound field recording. I explore our environment here in lots of different ways. So I made this sound coat and these spats that are obviously incredibly impractical in our environment, but using the ideas of aerial landscapes in those textile works. And this is an event that I created with the community called Defashion Dungog. And lots of people came with sustainable textiles and outfits and things like that. And other textile things, I create wearables as like conversation starters. And these insects that are in our rainforest. Particularly the beetle is quite large, and people sort of think it's a big cicada, but really it's only about a couple of millimetres long, and it eats a giant stinging tree leaves. So that's the basis. That's another project I'm in at the moment that's called Arboreous Earth, where we're doing sound portraits of trees, and this is one that I've contributed, a prickly leaf paperbark tree. But in a little while, I have to go off fairly quickly to set up my dead cat and recorder so that I can record the dawn chorus, because it's 5:30 in the morning here, and dawn chorus will start in about 10 minutes.
And Jane, do you want how soon do you have to go off? I don't want to rush you.
I'll start setting it up now, and I literally just have to take my my things outside, put it outside and turn it on, and hopefully the technical stuff can happen. And I'll be broadcasting the dawn chorus in a project called Reveille, which is a UK-based project by Sound Tent, and the dawn chorus is broadcast around the world from all different locations. And it's fascinating when you go on, you can sort of hit different markers on the map and just hear different sounds being broadcast live around the world.
I'm going to throw the link in the chat that you sent.
So I think, have I stopped sharing?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Now I've got to work out how to, here we are, stop sharing. Okay, good.
Wow, Jane, you're so prolific. You just went from like I'm curating this whole host of projects, and then I'm like doing all these different things in these different mediums. There's so much to respond to, and I don't want to rush you. So if there's any particular questions that you have for us that might be helpful for you.
I just feel as though I get a bit schizophrenic with all the different things that I'm working on, but I'm just working on bits and pieces. I think as creatives and multidisciplinary, we're often working on multiple things.
But they seem to feed into each other and inform each other.
Yeah.
Right. And like overlap in many ways. So I wouldn't see that as a deficit, in case you are. But yeah, does anybody want to jump in with any comments?
I just had a question about the landscape that has hooking and so forth. Is that a temporal project where you add more material as more revegetation happens?
That's an interesting idea. That would be.
Sorry to add another thing.
No, it's a piece that I'm working on, that I'm hoping to be part of an exhibition. So it will be a finished piece, but I like the idea of a temporal piece. I have started a work that is based on this property, and it could change over time. In fact, I could pull out the bright lime green of the lantana and replace it with rainforest species over time. So I could actually change it. That would be very interesting.
One quick question I had before you go, Jane. Do you have an exact time that you'll be broadcasting? It would be really cool to chime in and hear you.
Basically, it's from 6 till 6:30, but I'll probably have it on for an hour.
That's your time zone?
Yeah,
What's your time zone?
Which is basically when this finishes. So in the last few minutes, quickly run out and.
So in about 20 minutes, you're going to be on.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect timing.
As soon as I hit the start button.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm going to chime in. Well, I'll let you go get set up. I don't want you to feel too rushed.
I'll do it in the background so I can keep listening. It's so fascinating what everybody's doing.
I'm going to download all of the comments too and put them in the Google Doc so you can see later anything you might have missed. And they'll be at the bottom of the Google Doc. I'll have a table with each of your names and then the comments that everybody left for you. Thank you, Jane. It was really great to see your practice, and I'm excited to see which of these threads you pull on to sort of dive deeper into for towards the final presentation. There's so much rich stuff happening there to, yeah, go into. Yeah, and I do have some thoughts and comments, but I don't want to pull you too much. I want you to feel rushed for your, yeah, I was very inspired by your weaving in particular. And so I have my collaborator Karan Jandu is she's from India, but her partner is Polynesian. Sorry, her ex-partner is Polynesian. Her son's father is Polynesian, and she's been working on this documentary about the traditional tapas ritual of like making tapas there, where they're using it's mulberry tree or I think fig tree, but they're doing that same bark stripping process, but there's a whole ritual that is deeply embedded in culture in the processing of the material that's so beautiful. Like she's filmed this ritual, and they have these patterns, these tempos, like hitting patterns that they're all doing sort of in unison, and it's part of like telling the story. And yeah, it just makes you wonder about like what cultural traditions might there be around those practices near you. And I didn't know you could do that with hibiscus bark. That's so cool. And it looked so it was also so beautiful to see it. I've never seen it bark woven in that way. I think I'm used to seeing like twine or like material that's or like willow, for example, but it looks like it's working so well at the way that it's being woven together.
It's very, very long fibers and it's so strong. You just can't break it. You have to cut it.
Does it
It's
have to be wet when you're working with it?
no,
Huh.
no.
Wow.
It at one stage, I believe, I just hearsay that they were thinking about it as an alternative to the hemp industry because it's so strong.
Mm.
But it might have been that, hemp's just really grows very quickly. And maybe it could be down to processing. It's
And you're
incredible.
talking about hibiscus bark specifically?
Yeah, hibiscus,
Okay.
yeah. Hibiscus heterophyllus, I
Wow.
suspect that other hibiscuses are pretty similar. They're fast-growing species.
Hmm. Wow, that's really cool. Do you have an idea, since you're still with us, do you have an idea of what you might want to expand upon for towards your final presentation?
I think the hibiscus
Beautiful.
working on, but I just don't know that I will have it in a place because it's in got to be in that bucket of water for I just don't know if I'll have the right enough time to do it for that.
Yeah, I also
So,
wanted to ask you about the tea solution you're using.
oh no, that's just water.
Just
Um,
water. I thought there was a type of tea you're using that had some chemical reaction.
no, it has its own. It creates its own biochemistry, and so you just have to. It's normally done traditionally done in either salt or fresh water, and it's either
Hmm.
left I believe that's left for like 2 to 4 weeks
Hmm.
in that solution, and it gets quite skanky and stinky because of it's all breaking down. And then they hit it with the tupper and things. There's a great book called Fabric, and there's a whole section on the bark fibers and fabric that she goes
Hmm.
into. It's just marvelous.
Do you know who that book is by?
I think it's Victoria Finlay, uh, a UK-based writer.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jane. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I wish you luck on your sound piece shortly.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
thank you.
I forget I usually do snaps and claps after every presentation. All right, Mary, you ready?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for bearing with me. It's really inspiring to see everybody's work, and I haven't really known what I should take on for this class. And maybe I'll just start I'll play this from the start. So this has been an ongoing long-term project, but it shut down in 2019, like right before the pandemic. And it's a barge, like a floating food forest on the water, and it has been able to dock in different piers around New York City to combat this very old land law that doesn't, it's a very local project. The land law doesn't allow for foraging on public land, which is 30,000 acres. And there are about 100 acres of community garden space in New York, but there are these 30,000 acres of potential space for accessing fresh foods. And so the project came about because I had been able to do things on the water before and sort of knew this workaround for the commons of the water versus being adjacent to public land. And I learned that I had celiac and was like really searching for access to food that wasn't incredibly expensive. There was a community garden near me that shut down because of a development that was going to be happening. And I think I just thought, well, parks must be the answer. There is this space that has specific uses, and if that use could be expanded, like this could be beneficial for many residents around the city. So I was able to get a small grant and through a Kickstarter campaign, rent this barge for about 6 months, and thought, if this doesn't, like, if we can't find a way to keep this going after 6 months, then it's okay. We'll spread the plants around to people who want them, and we'll return the barge. And it ended up being around for 3 years. And I have to say that when the pandemic happened, I was already like, I can't fundraise for this anymore to continue to find the money to pay the rent for this thing. And there was so much liability. And I just remember being overwhelmed with it and thinking, this is not the worst thing, that at this moment, this has to be returned. And it was, a space that people used to forage from for many great things happened. There were times when like young people brought their families on, people would come back repeatedly to forage. It expanded a network of interest to the point where in one park, in Concrete Plant Park here in the Bronx, New York City Parks Department did decide that they would break this rule, and they made this food forest on land that's about 7 acres where people can go and forage. And I thought at that point, this is great. I mean, this is like the workaround of the water, and people getting to see this working. The Parks Department wasn't as afraid of it anymore, and they're trying it. Meanwhile, they never really changed the language of the ordinance. So it's still something that they can reinforce at any point in time. And it's only this one place that you're allowed to do this. So anyway, I went through burnout with it. not to make this into a therapy session, but I then realized that there was a lot of interest still in trying to do it again, and was able to get a couple of small grants, almost enough to like afford to purchase a barge this time. So now this could be an ongoing, location-based project. So it always have to move, but it could move strategically to different parks where this wasn't yet an option. And so I was able to work with students to do some redesigns, then later found the actual vessel, which is this. It's a little bit smaller, like 90 feet by 30 feet. So the original was 140 by 30. So we're losing some square footage in this, but yet it's like really interesting architecturally. You can see that there are these planter beds already built into this. It's a dump barge. So I'm pretty excited about that. And there's this other part of the sculpture work that I've been doing that's more contemplative and meditative, and it's about water running through systems, and you're listening to the drips of water. And in this case, it's salt water, and the salt water is growing salt tolerant plants. So what I'm thinking about and trying to do is combine these things into one vessel that's more contemplative than the first. It can't be the same project again, or I would just lose interest, I think. And as you can probably tell, I'm more of a I like stages for other people, and I love planning larger events almost that people can then use in different ways. And so learning about your practices and projects is really informative and exciting to me, because you're really on a different level, like getting into the craft. And for me, it's very almost foreign. Like I know the plants enough to know how they're used, like to eat, but I don't know how to make anything with them. And that's what I think I'm like hoping in this next phase of this project, that this can be a place that's available for more than just foraging for food, but it could be a space where artists can come and collect materials and use in a different way. So I'm thinking about all those things. It sounds very abstract, but this is like the permaculture plan for this barge. And I thought that with the time that's left in this course, the next few weeks, I want to get to a different, I really want to take it as far as I can. And I think I will be able to like gain possession of this and at the end of August, if all goes well. And so in the meantime, I really do want to get the project much further along. And so I think that's what the course is the impetus to move the project further along. And that's where I'm at right now. I don't know, like I have many, many questions, but I'm really open to what people are thinking in general. If you see room for other opportunities for ways that this could be useful or advantageous or more contemplative, like I'm open and interested in all of those ideas. It feels like the real beginnings of the next phase of this project. And I'll stop sharing. Oops. Or I can leave that up, but. So yeah, that's what if I wasn't clear too, let me know, because you can go back and talk about something in more detail too.
Yeah, it's so cool, Mary. I really appreciate hearing the struggles that you've gone through and trying to sustain the project too. It's just so real. And I think that it's exciting that you've, even in spite of all of those struggles, you're like ready to take it on and do it again, like version number two, but in different ways and finding, I love the inquiry too around like how might this also become a space for more than just foraging, but like culture making and artists in using this space. One thing that came to mind was the possibility of a dye garden. Suzanne could come and forage there for fiber dyeing. Um, and also like the possibility of plants are such storied entities and they're so embedded in culture, and it just makes me think about like what native plants are there, which I'm sure you're researching in depth, but also like how might you collaborate with I'm thinking of like local tribes, for instance, who maybe have storied histories with these plants, and then hosting events. Like hosting events on the barge is something that I could see being really generative around like a tea ceremony around that where you're making tea with one of the plants that are growing there, or like you're sort of generating cultural happenings that are engaging the plants that are on the barge. But yeah, I think it's so exciting. It's such a beautiful project, and it's so ambitious. It's so radically ambitious. It's a lot to take on. It's sort of one last thing. It's so inspiring to me that you're like, well, I've secured the funding for 6 months. But like, and realistically, for the project to be a success, you would need it to last more than 6 months for things to like really start growing, I would imagine. But you're like, so let's just do it, like it will come. But I appreciate too the stress that yeah, like I have some friends who are running nonprofits, and it's just you're constantly in this funding cycle of like worrying where's the next funding going to come from. Um, but yeah, it's an amazing project.
Yeah, it's quite a worry. I mean, I feel like that worry will be slightly alleviated. And I also think that after getting this off the ground, I mean, the goal would be to hand it over to an organization who can really keep it running long term.
That's great.
And in terms of programming, I know that there are a few nonprofits who could really utilize this outdoor like farming space for their workshops and work. So finding the right partner to take it on and over is on my mind. But after the excitement of the build out and getting it going again, because I do really love that. But I think maybe Robin said earlier how much she appreciates the chance in the materials, and I think for me it's really the chance and like the meetings of people, and I do just love being on it and being able, because it's an fairly enclosed system. You really see every change and every mistake is visible, and you can, yeah, it's like being able to be in a microcosm of an ecosystem and seeing the cause and effect really literally, but it feels like chance with people more, with what parts of plants people pick and like how much and at what times and stuff like that. So I really
I love this presentation too, Mary, of course. I didn't know the origin of swale either, so that was really interesting to hear how it all came together in your mind. And I'm sure you thought about this, but I was also wondering when you start the new project, if you thought at all about like inviting maybe local students or children or just people in general to help you plant. And I know I've, taken a class with you and you really focused in an installation you did in our space, which was amazing, on plants that can survive on salt water and, with the threat we face to all our clean water supply and land in general. Like, I know you've done this in the past, but in the planting and just, are you going to continue to, I guess, use it as a tool to educate people about the future and what the future holds for us?
Yeah, thanks. I would like for it to be more engaged in the struggles with sea level rise here. And I think that that's also something I'm trying to integrate into the design more. Maybe beyond the plants, like somehow I mean, I don't know if how much this barge can tolerate in terms of water being like lots of watery areas on it, but salt marshes have been on my mind. Like, could a salt marsh organ some way to engage like science-oriented children with the salt marsh and the like how important it is for carbon sequestration? That's been on my mind in terms of thinking through the way that the structure is made.
I love it.
But yeah, it's like a lot of it has to be this companion planting system that sometimes like there's so much, it's overwhelming, and I haven't really been able to learn that much about one particular plant. So I think maybe also I'm hoping to take that on this time where I have more of a focus. And yeah.
Are you collaborating? Are you collaborating with gardeners or herbalists or saltwater plant?
Yeah, and that's why I haven't really had to take it on myself, because there are people I'm able to work with who have the skills and the knowledge around.
That's great.
Yeah, that's
great. You're like gardening your own little ecosystem to make the project happen. I love you said you love helping bring about stages for other people, but I also like in looking at project, it's just literally a stage for plants.
Stage, yeah.
My mind immediately went to the plants, and then the people come, but the center stage is the plants. It's so beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. That was really exciting. and I look forward to seeing how it evolves everybody's projects between
Yeah.
now and the next session. This is what I love, is seeing in the stages, and don't feel like you have to have anything finished by your next class. This is, what I'm really trying to like cultivate here is an orientation towards process and not final outcomes. And in working in an ecological way where it's all about the process, right? So you're just going to be in a different stage, a different process stage next time we meet. I want to do like 5-year reunions or something sometime. Uh, Kate, I would love if you're up for it, if everybody, and if anybody has to go, feel free. But Kate, if you're free, I'd love to just touch upon your peat project.
Hello. Oh, I see it's gone dark here. Um, we've got the opposite from the dawn chorus. Uh, I happily, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I Yes, I'm afraid I've been too preoccupied by moving and trying to keep our project going at the same time to tune into the last classes. It's really lovely to find out what everyone else is doing, and I look forward to the next time. I find myself in a different position in that I've committed to a peat landscape, and I really don't want to use the material at all because I believe it should stay in the ground. Um, and that's what a lot of campaigning is about. So in a way, I've moved away from using a physical material of the soil, and I feel even by now quite offended when I find that people are expressing the new awareness for peat by using it as a material. I think no,
Mm.
the point is not using it. I could
Kate,
quickly
do you want me to
share.
share? Oh, do you want to
Yeah,
share? Because I also have it up.
um,
It might be easier if you go
I'll
through it.
I'll try and share. Um, desktop. Hopefully I can get there. Have you got me yet?
Mhm.
Okay. So at the moment I have, unusually for me, 2 exhibitions of work. I normally would be doing perhaps workshops or yeah, I co-work with a group. This one is in the Netherlands, and I grabbed a chance to work with a Spanish-based friend to show people's connections to peatlands and the transition to peat-free compost. I shouldn't assume that everyone knows what peatland is. It's a landscape scale of development of organic soil with a living green layer which contributes to the ongoing growth. And coming at it as an artist, I'm saying there's a lot of technical issues, but it's a real cultural challenge prompting. And at the moment, there are a lot more collaborative responses to it by artists and researchers and advocacy groups than there were, say, 10 years ago when I began working on this. You're welcome to have this link and go through it, but obviously not now. But felt it important really to point to the networks of people that are working on themes just in this locality of the university, which is a very life science oriented setup. So to have actually artists meeting advocacy groups, meeting scientists, meeting the museum people was, yeah, an outcome of just doing this show. What I would like to be focusing on is my drawings more and to doing studio work. I have not had a settled studio practice for quite some time now. So I was bringing drawings from even some years ago. And what I notice following everyone else's presentations is that I'm using found objects a lot. I would love for you to look at Panta's work, my colleague, and she's taking part in the same Dawn Chorus work that Jane is. But for my drawings, well, as an artist, we all reflect on why we draw. And I'm becoming more determined that artwork and drawing has a real role to play along science and articulating that. But if there was one piece I would look at, it was this one from it's on the back of a bag containing a product that goes into sheep's milk. So I did it on site as a medium for field drawing. And that for me had quite an immediacy and was quite improvised. So I think I feel more improvisational and widely connecting than the more in-depth inquiries that perhaps I've heard this evening. And yes, I drew on compost bags. This is at a workshop. How are these plastic bags found in the soil? How are they used? This is looking at these and using the bags to make a drawing about some aspect of the trade in peat. So this is some of the work on show. I'm going to flick through again. Individual figures which are made from bits of card lying around, little bits of stick. They're very small scale, easily mended things, but painfully they're using acrylic ink. So that's something I would like to think about. Gosh, so that's what I would show you just from this exhibition. I have, sorry, these are other works I would like to go here. Over in England at the moment, I'm showing an animation about peat and restoration, but I'd like to just mention these two puppets that I began to make, from moving from shadow puppets to glove puppets. All very portable and very mobile work that can be bunged into a bag. This is made from papier-mâché and old scraps of cloth. And they are two alter egos. This is a will-o'-the-wisp, which emerged from the industrial days of peat digging in Northern Europe. And this is a bog woman. The bog bodies also were dug out as the peat was milled away. I'm finding myself in a stage of having conversations with these puppets and characters and wanting to create an intergenerational conversation through this with I'll be working towards actually a multimodal conference presentation with two younger researchers, and I'm pretty sure next time we talk I'll be referring to that as well. So I hope that's given you a little idea of some aspects of how I've been using found materials and found objects. Mm-hmm. And sorry for being in the dark. If I didn't have pins and needles, I would get up and put the light on.
Oh, thanks, Kate. That's so beautiful. I love the interdisciplinary response that you're generating in the space of of talking about peat, like working across disciplines. And I'm particularly excited about the sort of mythopoetic realms that you're entering with the storytelling and like through these puppets. I sort of see that as a vehicle for like how you say you're in conversation with these puppets. It's like a way to be in conversation with the peat itself. And how do we, I've heard can't remember where I've heard this from. I heard this from a number of cultural practitioners, but just on the power of storytelling as a vehicle to move through the culture work that we need today to come back into relationship with the ecosystems and land. That like storytelling is a really powerful vehicle to do that, and it always has been. And yeah, I just and oh, the other thing that was coming up was this, yeah, and I forget who said this, but how the question of like how do we speak for the land when it can't speak for itself in some cultural contexts. And I almost see these puppets as being like a vehicle for like you sort of channeling the land speaking through these puppets. Um, Maybe I'm reading into it, but that was just what was uh I'm a bit biased because I like run a storytelling collective and I really love storytelling as a cultural practice because it like brings us together. And but yeah, I think that's really beautiful. I'm excited to see how this develops. Well, if anybody has any other last comments, um, feel free. No pressure. I'm going to save the chat too. And yeah, to
Thank you.
echo
It was
Robin
all so
also, but
inspiring. Yeah, it's really inspiring. And the broadcast is happening now.
Wow.
I hear it. Jane, just to clarify, are those live recordings of the sounds that are happening right now, or are they is this a pre-recording? Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That was really special.
It's
Um,
fascinating to go to the sounds map, and it's so interesting because obviously somewhere like the Philippines, you'll hear lots of like roosters and village sounds. In Delhi, like this is from last year when I was listening, in Delhi there was lots of traffic sounds, but you'll still hear nature coming in through it. Last night I started listening because for us, because it's for a 24-hour period, it's going to go for another 6-8 hours today. But it started last night, and I was listening to something that was up in Greenland that was hydrophones in the water that had all this incredible, it sounded like ice melt or seals calling. And so sounds are from everywhere. And there was also a place in the US which was set up in a stadium, and it was just the drone of some sort of generator. So it's really varied. And if you got one of the links that I sent is where someone's sort of curating where they're going to. And I think coming up now, they're going to be going to around Queensland area, and there's lots of hydrophones in the water, and they'll be listening to underwater sounds like the fish and snapping of oysters and things.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm excited to chime in over the next few hours. Such beautiful presentations all around from everyone. And for next class, and we meet again in a little over a month's time, about a month's time. It'll just be the same format, and we'll be inviting in ecoartspace members as a whole. Usually we get somewhere between 20 to 60 people who come in and watch the presentations. If there's anybody who doesn't want to present in a public platform, just shoot me an email as soon as you can, ideally. And I'll stagger the class a little bit, so we'll do you before everybody else hops on. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how everyone's projects develop. And it's been, yeah, it's just, I'm very grateful to be in community with each of you. And I learned so much from your practices. So looking forward to the next time we meet. Take care.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.